What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, repping the Tracy McGrady jersey, one of the greatest to ever do it. It's a laundry day in the Stewart household, so I just slipped on a white t-shirt, Tracy McGrady jersey, called it a day. But guess what? This is going to be our second part of this little must-draft mini-series that we're doing here on the channel. And if you didn't peep the running back video, make sure you go check it out. I think that I'll be able to link it up here. We'll see what happens. The redraft ranks are coming soon, so I'm doing all the research on these wide receivers, these running backs, and as I'm doing it, I'm flipping through, and I'm putting some names to the side of guys that I like. And a few wide receivers stuck out to your boy as guys I want to have on a lot of teams this season. Today we're going to go over 3 of them. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Before we get into the video, man, if at any point in time during this video you say, hey, you know what, this was a pretty good video, this is a pretty good film, piece of content, whatever have you, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. It's free. Make sure you put the notification bell on. We're going to be dropping heat all summer long. Today we're going to be talking about Michael Thomas first up. And newsflash, everybody, Michael Thomas is not dead. Michael Thomas has an ADP of 28.4, and if he's available in the third round, if he even sniffs that third round, that 301, I am pushing the button on him every single time. I'm loving this little dip we're getting because of last season. I get that it was bad. I get that 2020 wasn't great, but can we give the guy a break? He's an elite wide receiver. We know this. Last season, he suffered his only 2 injuries to keep him out of a football game. He has been nothing but an Iron Man in the NFL. And y'all, people want to come out here and say that he's injury prone, he's a slant boy, he's this and that. Too much slander is going on in the boy Michael Thomas's name right now. These injuries, they're fluky. Players aren't injury prone. Shout out to Edwin Porras. He's done great work with that kind of stuff. He said Michael Thomas is ready to go for 2021, and if he says a guy is ready to go for 2021, that's all I need to hear. Like I said before, we know Michael Thomas is an elite wide receiver. Since he's entered the league, he has finished as the wide receiver 8, the wide receiver 6, the wide receiver 6, and then the wide receiver 1 in 2020. Then we fast forward to 2021. What's going to happen this year? He walks into an empty wide receiver room. Emmanuel Sanders leaves. Jared Cook leaves. They leave behind 169 targets in this offense. Outside of Alvin Kamara, he has to compete with Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, Adam Troutman, which is a whole bunch of nobodies. It was just kind of the tone that I used when I said those names. I kind of talked them up a little bit. But they're in contention for having the worst wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and tight end 1 group in the entire league. And because of this, Michael Thomas is in play for what we want to call the holy grail of wide receiver seasons. That's a 30% target share. Only D-Hop, Antonio Brown, Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, and Mike Evans have done this since Michael Thomas has entered the league in 2016. And the interesting one I want you guys to note in the back of your head is Mike Evans in 2016. Evans was peppered with the most targets of his entire career. This is a guy who has several 1,000-yard seasons, a bunch of wide receiver 1 seasons, and the craziest year of his career came in 2016 when he had nobody in that offense. It was Adam Humphries and Cameron Brate were the next highest targeted receivers. We know Jameis Winston's a fuck it QB. The guy's just gonna lob it up to his number 1 receiver down the field. He's generated a bunch of wide receiver 1 seasons with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin. The guy just produces fantasy points. But what's important about this is we have evidence that he's not only good for fantasy points, you know, throwing the ball, making interceptions, so now you have garbage time and you have close games and shootouts, but he's also capable of zeroing in on one wide receiver and giving them 30% of his pass attempts. And it just so happens that Michael Thomas is in a very similar spot. He now has Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback with a bunch of nobodies in the receiver room. Adam Troutman, you can pretty much compare him to what Cameron Brate was. Adam Humphries, kind of like Traquan Smith, who's going to play in the slot. They don't got a lot of options there outside of Michael Thomas. And I don't want to hear about Drew Brees making Michael Thomas as a slant boy, you know, behind the first down marker. Michael Thomas is an elite player of football. We have this data. The last time he was healthy for a full season dominating as he does, he had to play 6 games. Now with Drew Brees, he had to play him with Teddy Bridgewater, and he was just fine. He averaged 18 points per game in 0.5 PPR and was the wide receiver 2 overall during that span. Behind, guess who? Chris Godwin, the wide receiver that Jameis Winston was throwing to. Now, I think some of you guys out there are going to say, oh, but what if Taysom Hill starts? And Taysom Hill starting is the doomsday scenario you have to factor into his price, but you're still getting him in that late second round, early third, so it's already baked in. Taysom Hill's not going to be that much worse than Teddy Bridgewater. If you look at Taysom Hill's career numbers when he's completed more than 10 passes, so that's just a way to define games where he started it. You know, he's so gadgety, he's going to throw passes in games, but games where he's completed more than 10 passes, he's produced on a per game rate extremely similar to Teddy Bridgewater. You can see that in this chart right here. Michael Thomas will be fed. He will break 100 receptions. Book it. Michael Thomas, top 5 wide receiver season in 2021. Then we have a guy who's very similar to that Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins build, and we have Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson's another one of these wide receivers where he's competing with nobody. It's Cole Kmet, it's Darnell Mooney, it's Jimmy Graham. I'm scared of none of those guys. I like Darnell Mooney as a late round flyer, but he's not going to command targets. He's just going to be a deep threat. Allen Robinson's going off the board as the wide receiver 12, and I love that price. He has finished as the wide receiver 14 in 0.5 PPR points per game the last 2 years. And that was with Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. And I really do feel bad for the guy. He has run unbelievably frigid cold in the quarterback department for his entire career. He has had Christian Hackenberg in college. If you guys remember, I'm a Jets fan, so I remember Christian Hackenberg. This guy was drafted in the 2nd round by the Jets, and he never started a single fucking game. That one still stings. Then we have Blake Bortles, a guy we know sucks. Then we have Mitchell Trubisky, a guy we know sucks. I really do feel bad for Allen Robinson. He has never had an elite quarterback, and even then, last year he puts up 102 receptions, 1250, and 6 touchdowns. And all of those numbers were top 8 besides the touchdowns, and that's why he finished as the wide receiver 14. And why were they so low? Because Mitchell Trubisky. And the offense is going to score less touchdowns with a bad quarterback. They're going to be less efficient. But also, Mitchell Trubisky is a super inaccurate quarterback. The guy literally throws. He might as well get the same LASIK surgery that Jameis Winston is getting, because Mitchell Trubisky just can't see in a straight line. It's a really tough look. The guy was garbage in the red zone. Allen Robinson was 4th in the NFL in red zone targets, yet only finished with 6 touchdowns. The 3 wide receivers that have more red zone targets than him finished with 14, 9, and 18. Allen Robinson could have easily, in like an alternate universe where he just has a decent quarterback, he could have easily scored 8 to 12 touchdowns, and that's on the low end of things. It just so happens that Mitchell Trubisky was 42nd in red zone completion percentage. There were backup quarterbacks in the NFL last year that were better at throwing in the red zone than Mitchell Trubisky. Just let that sink in. Allen Robinson this year, he's going to spread his wings. He's going to rise like a fucking phoenix, man. He's going to get his targets. He's going to get his yards, and he will get his touchdowns in 2021. And most importantly, he's finally going to get his accurate passes. Justin Fields is going to be the best quarterback that Allen Robinson has ever played with. And that's not up for debate. I'm not going to break down Justin Fields' entire college resume. You guys know how I feel about him, and if you don't, you can check out the video in the top right, top left, wherever it's going to be. That's where I break down Justin Fields as a prospect. He is one of the cleanest QBs I have ever seen coming out of college, and at the very least, he is a massive upgrade to Mitch Trubisky, and I expect him to start in week 1. Like I said, accuracy has held back Allen Robinson these last couple years. Allen Robinson has ranked outside the top 60 in target accuracy the last 2 years. Lucky for him, though, Justin Fields' best trait coming out of college is his accuracy. The first line in Justin Fields' strengths on PFF.com is being a deadly accurate passer. You can pencil in 100 catches, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns as very reasonable numbers for Allen Robinson to put up next year. And wide receiver 14 feels like his absolute floor. You're getting him at wide receiver 12. He could easily finish as a top 8, top 7, top 6 kind of guy. I'm scooping him up a lot, and then I'm coming around in the back end, and I'm matching him up, stacking him up with the boy Justin Fields. For this last one, we're going to talk about Corey Davis, who's going off the board as the wide receiver 51 at pick 115. People forget that Corey Davis was really good last year. He was 8th in PFF's receiving grade. He was 5th in yards per route run. He was super efficient on a low volume offense, and he still managed to secure a 23.1% target share, which was 24th in the NFL, alongside a top 5 wide receiver talent in A.J. Brown. He then finished as the wide receiver 28 in 0.5 PPR points per game among players who played 10 or more games. He was nothing but great last year. He played alongside A.J. Brown. He faced a lot of number 1 corners. He produced. Last year was the first year where I've ever felt like Corey Davis was a good wide receiver. You could start him. I remember picking him up off waivers and starting him in the lineup a bunch of times. He played really well last year. I don't understand how he goes from finishing wide receiver 28 to now being wide receiver 51 in ADP. The guy is an alpha. He has that alpha size, which we really want, which means that he's going to suck up targets. He has a bunch of upside. And now he's going to a spot where he can operate as the number 1 wide receiver in an offense for the first time since he was in year 2 of his NFL career. And we want to really pay attention to what these teams are doing and what they're saying with their front office decisions. The Jets had a bunch of options in free agency this year. There was Kenny Golladay, Will Fuller, Juju Smith-Schuster. There was a bunch of wide receivers out there. And early in the process, they went out and paid Corey Davis. It was like 3 years, $37.5 million. This is a guy that they want to build around as their wide receiver 1. They went out and they grabbed Elijah Moore to slot in the slot. They're going to have Corey Davis starting on the outside. Those are the 2 cornerstone pieces that they went out this offseason to build around with their new quarterback. And the thing is, on the Titans, they were literally like the 31st team in pass plays per game. The Jets are a bad team. There's going to be plenty of garbage time, plenty of games where they're behind early. They're just going to have to air the ball out the rest of the game. And Corey Davis is going to really benefit from that. He's finally going to have the volume to challenge for wide receiver 2 numbers. And I don't see how his ADP isn't closer to a back end wide receiver 3. And he's probably going to end up around wide receiver 36 for me in my rankings. And that's it, boys. The wide receivers that I keep drafting, that I'm going to keep pushing up my draft boards to really get that exposure to early in Underdog Fantasy Football, is going to be Corey Davis, Michael Thomas, and Allen Robinson. Those are my guys right now. Big alpha wide receivers that are going to command a lot of targets in 2021. Let me know down below if you guys have any wide receivers that you guys like, that you're drafting a lot of. Put them in the comments down below. I'll take a look at them when I'm doing my rankings over the weekend. And if you want to hop in any underdog drafts with me, if you want to talk fantasy football, make sure you go down below at the top of the description. Join the Discord, man. We're doing underdog drafts in there, mock drafts. We're talking ball all day long in that Discord, and that's just kind of the place where we can house this community and we can have a little back and forth. I want to have a nice spot, a hub, if you will, where we can just kind of come together as a community, talk, hang out, and I really just want to be connected with you guys, because I really want to build a community that really rides for me and where I really ride for you guys and your fantasy teams. As always, you can follow me at @Ronstore_ on Twitter. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Entertainment.